so-called leaders, especially our president, seem to know little and care less about our ballooning deficits, increasingly big government, our failing economy, and the real problems facing America. America, known to most of us, is under attack, and we simply cannot afford to allow the liberals to win again this fall. Fortunately, one man in Washington, D.C. is a genuine leader, and after having served in D.C. both terms of the Bush administration, I know that even Democrats respect this member of Congress as a public servant who always tells it like it is. So please join me in extending a warm North Iowa welcome to our Congressman, Steve King.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for the introduction this morning, and appreciate first all the work that you have done to serve Iowa very much. And we step up in our own way and take the tools and the gifts we've been given. And I think one thing that happens is that we don't give enough credit to the people every day that are out there. Do something for children. Do something for seniors. Do something for your neighbor. Do something to come up with an invention that's going to make our lives a little bit better. Maybe add in technology and think that whenever we do that, we always improve our qualities of life. And there's a lot of things going on in America. And there's a lot of great big reasons, good reasons, why we've become the unchallenged greatest nation in the world. And the world's largest economy. And in a country that's struggling now with our identity. And the problem we have with America's identity is we seem to be having this dichotomy of which direction we want to go. Whether we're going to turn off to the left into this dependency society with increased taxes, increased debt, off into the abyss of perhaps the abyss that Greece seems to be on the precipice of today. Governor Branstad said about 3 weeks ago that if we get a second term of Barack Obama, we will be worse than Greece. I ran the numbers through my head, and it works out about right. I think he must have done the same thing. They don't have any, we could bail Greece out with a small part of, we just take our deficit and bail Greece out. That's the comparison. They're only 2% of the GDP of the European Union. We're far greater than that. No one can bail us out. And maybe they wouldn't want to. We have to take care of the United States of America. It's up to us to do it. It's up to us to do so in our generation. It's up to us to do so not in this generation and in this election. We've got to make the decision whether we are going to go off, as I said, into the dependency version of this society, or whether we're going to move forward and go back to our underpinnings and refurbish the pillars of American exceptionalism, strengthen our foundation, our economic foundation, stop this insane debt and deficit that's grown now from 10 billion to over 10 trillion to over $15 trillion just in the last 3.5 years. And, excuse me, my little granddaughter, my most recent one, Reagan Ann King, came into the world a little over 1.5 years ago. Her share of the national debt was $44,000. And then on her first birthday, her share was $48,000. And we think about student loans that range from $24,000 to $30,000 to $40,000. A lot of those students have a degree, at least, and an opportunity to go to work and a skill, and at least they're certified as trainable. They've got an opportunity to pay that down, and that was their choice. But those little babies born in America don't have that choice. Now today, their debt's $51,000. Yours is too. And if you have a federal tax liability, which only about half of the people in the country do these days, you just go ahead and multiply that times 2. Now you're at $102,000, your share. And I count on all of my grandkids being taxpayers, so I figure all of them have $102,000 worth of debt. So let's see, that comes to $510,000. That's my grandchildren's share of the national debt. And they're a long ways from paying their first real tax dollar yet at this point. Well, that sets the stage for where we are today. I want to back up a little bit and tell you just a little bit about my background. A lot of you do know it, but as these new counties are added on, the 21 new counties going east from the northwest Iowa part of the 18 counties I currently represent, there are another, actually it's 32 in all of western Iowa, the western third of the state, that I've represented now since the election in 2002. But these 18 counties in northwest Iowa are added to the 21 counties in northern Iowa, and it adds the major communities of Fort City and Ames and other communities on over to Chickasaw County to Hampton. And so when you want to get to know somebody, you kind of like to know about their background. Where were they raised? What values were they raised? What do they do for education? What do they do for a living? What's their family like? And so I'll try to give you the short version of that for me to give you a sense of who I am. And as I was raised in a law enforcement family, my father was a manager of the state police radio stations, and I was born in Storm Lake, where he worked there. And then when they opened up the station in Belmont, we moved up to Goodell to manage the station in Belmont. I lived there throughout my grade school years, so that's when everything's right with the world. And when anytime from kindergarten until about 6th grade, you don't feel those stresses, adolescence hasn't come in on you. It's a beautiful, idyllic world, and everything is just right. And actually, it was right in the world that I grew up in. My mother was a homemaker, and we had a pot roast in the oven on Sundays. Went to church, and it was done. We came back. She made the gravy and the carrots and the potatoes, and that's what we did. And I think that, I learned to read with Fun with Dick and Jane, that book, or books, and I think my parents must have read them as a primer on how to raise a family. That's my background here at North Central Iowa. I ate my first McDonald's hamburger here in Mason City. And I laid in that little bed out there in the bedroom in Goodell without a heat register in it. The door was no door, so the heat got in there a little bit. And I lay there at night and I would dream, one day I'm going to get rich, and I'll get rich enough to buy my own airplane, and then I can fly to Mason City and get a McDonald's hamburger anytime I need. Well, the world has changed a little bit. I think I drove by McDonald's last night, but I didn't stop. But I do many times. And so that's the earlier part of the background. And then we moved down to Denison when they opened up that station down there. We went from the Prairie Pothole region down to the hilly timbered region of Iowa. And there I graduated from high school and went on to college at Northwest Missouri State in Maryville, Missouri. And in the summertime, I was working construction, the pipeline, and then off on road construction. And one time I was signed up to go up on the pipeline to Alaska. They were building the Alaska pipeline. It was shut down by Porton Junction, or I would have been up there. And when they called me and they said, well, that's been broken now, we're going to go ahead. By then, Marilyn and I had been married. And I thought Alaska called to me, and she kind of called to me and said, you like being married? I decided I liked being married, and that was before I realized she might have been bluffing. So I didn't go to Alaska. But I stayed here, and I ended up with a bulldozer, doing custom work on a farm, building terraces, dams, waterways, that kind of thing. And Marilyn was one credit hour short of being able to be certified to teach school in Iowa. She went to the University of South Dakota, and at her degree found out that they had added up her credits for Iowa wrong, and we didn't have the money or the time to send her back to South Dakota for that credit hour. Now there would be an easier way to solve that problem. She finally did get it, but she was waiting tables at Joe Martin Steakhouse for I think $1.25 an hour in tips, and I was running that bulldozer and decided I have to take charge of her life. So I convinced the banker to loan me 100%, and I went out and bought an old beaten up bulldozer. I drug it out of the weeds and welded on it and put it to work, and before I earned $100, the engine blew up, and I didn't have the money to pay anybody to fix it, and I knew I was going to have to do my own anyway, so I tore it all down, and we put it back together out there in the open shop yard where the water cooled when it rained on us, and there's Marilyn, 4.5 months pregnant, with our first child, standing in the rain with a 7-foot cheater pipe, torquing the head bolts on a D7. Now, I just told you the story. That takes care of the next 28 years or so of business. We learned a lot of it the hard way. When we got knocked down and got back up, we went through the farm crisis years of the 80s. My bank closed April 26, 1985 by the FDIC. They went under, and that meant all of our accounts were frozen. In spite of all of that, I made payroll for over 28 years, 1,400, and I believe it was 40 consecutive weeks. And in spite of all the things that we went through. And in the 90s, if you remember the floods of the 90s, the 500-year flooding in 1993, I had 4 major projects going on. They were all underwater simultaneously. And we took a beating that year too. It caused me to reassess myself. I decided I really don't think the degree of risk is proportional to the potential for profit on this building a big construction company. So I shrunk the company back down, got the capital underneath myself. I had all this energy, and it spilled over into politics, and I ran for the Iowa Senate in '96, where I went there to serve at Merlin Barts. It started in 1997. January 13th was that date. We took the oath that day together. And then 6 years in the Iowa Senate, and the seat opened up in the 5th Congressional District, which was because of the 2000 census. And, of course, I won that seat, went on to Congress, and now we have this redistricting. That's, in these 39 counties, or if you take a look at it, it's going to be the most powerful ag congressional district in America. We're going to lead in more commodities than I think any other ag district that there is. We'll be #1 in eggs. We'll be #1 in renewable energy production. You add the ethanol, biodiesel, and wind. That's easily the case with the 5th district today. In fact, the first bill that I introduced when I went to Congress in 2003 was when I was sworn in, was legislation that created the blender's credit for biodiesel and extended the blender's credit for ethanol. And that bill became law and became also a foundation for the expansion of renewable energy that we have had in this part of the state and country. And today, as I said, the 5th District of Iowa is the #1 renewable energy producing congressional district in all of America. And this new 4th district will easily be that and put more distance between us and #2. And so, and I'm not here taking credit for that. It was the people that put the investment in place. It was private sector capital that was put at risk because people had ideas and they believed that they could produce ethanol, biodiesel, and wind generation and get into the marketplace and compete. And over that period of time, we watched that blender's credit reduced by 6 cents, and now it's gone away as of last year, and they're in the business competing. Ethanol is competing with petroleum in the marketplace, and I think it's a very good thing for us. When I was first elected to Congress, the value of ag products, crops and livestock sold in Iowa in 2002 was $12 billion, billion with a B. And by the end of 8 years, so the end of the 2010 crop season, it was $24 billion. Value of ag land has gone from $60 billion in 2002 to now, just a year ago, so over a period of 9 years, it's more than tripled. It's gone to over $200 billion in value of ag. And you look at the capital that has been formed here in this part of the state, and especially in north central and northwestern Iowa, the capital that's formed here has been tremendous. We formed more capital here, I think, by any measure than any time in the history of Iowa. And we should feel good about that. We always want to make it better. We focus on the things we need to improve, and I do that too. But we've made a lot of progress, and we should be very proud of what's been accomplished. And even to this extent, we are not the state that has had the greatest increase in our individual income. We have Tippecanoe, North Dakota. Theirs increased 6.7% over the last full reporting year. But here in Iowa, we're sitting there a close second. Ours grew at 6.4%. Theirs is 6.7, ours 6.4. You got to go all the way down to Oklahoma to find third place, all the way down to 5.3% growth, and then there are several states clustered at 5.2. When you think of where we are, we're here in Iowa, and we're told every day that the economy's bad. Yes, we lose companies and we lose jobs, and there's a certain evolution in the economy. New companies start and new jobs are created too. It never stays the same. We should try to hold the jobs we have and grow a lot of new jobs and have more diversification in our economy so we're not vulnerable to some of those dramatic shifts in the marketplace. But we've done very, very well. Our unemployment numbers in this state have dropped. I know that when Merlin and I served as the state senate, though, I recall a full employment economy at 2% unemployment rate. And we're not there yet. I heard yesterday that it could have dropped below 5%. That'd be right. I was unemployment. What would the number be? You know? I heard a number under 5%, which it says it's going in the right direction. I'll put out this little thing. Watch this. We may catch North Dakota an individual income increase next year. I say that because there's a lot of grain in the bin, a lot of equipment bought, and a lot of money that's already been spent, that's been deducted. Now I think this next round, we've got a chance to actually catch North Dakota. It's pretty great to look out across 50 states and think the only state that by the measure of individual income increase is doing better than Iowa is the state where they struck oil. We didn't strike oil here in Iowa, and we're at 6.4% growth. We should feel very good about that. And so that's been my involvement on the political and policy side. You'll know that on the conservative. I believe the Founding Fathers got it right. I don't think it's a living and breathing document. It's no guarantee if that's the case. In fact, it's just an artifact of history if we think we're going to have judges that define the Constitution to be what they want it to be. And I've drawn a bright line on that, and I've held the line on the text and the original understanding of the Constitution, free markets, freedom, personal liberty, because that's what gives us our best growth, our best vitality. And though we have a campaign ahead of us, and you'll all know that Christy Vilsack has decided to move into this district to run against me. I don't think she's quite been very clear about what that motive might be, but she has decided to do that and moved into Ames, into a duplex down there. She has said that she will raise over $3 million. She's ahead of schedule to do that. I believe that'll happen. There are at least 3 super PACs that have lined up against me on this, and the people in Washington and the people that are writing the national stories see this as one of the top 5 races in the country. One of those top 5 races to watch. And so there are some differences between us. Even though she doesn't take a position on anything that's happened before that I can find, we do know that she said she wants to get elected in order to to help Barack Obama get reelected and to support his agenda. So, and I'm not too happy about that motive myself. But I can tell you what his agenda is. I've been doing battle with Barack Obama's agenda now for 3.5 years. And the #1 highest profile piece of Barack Obama's agenda is, of course, Obamacare. And as that rolled out and they brought that bill through the House of Representatives, I called a press conference and tens of thousands of people came. They came from all 50 states. And they did so because they wanted the federal government to keep their hands off of their own personal management of their health care. But we know that didn't happen. That Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and Barack Obama put together, I will call it a legislative shenanigan, to package up a means to slide Obamacare through with I could take you through the whole thing. It's too long, it's too boring, but it is infuriating. It wasn't the voice of the American people is my point. And immediately upon the passage of Obamacare, after those long rallies throughout that weekend, I thought that I hadn't hardly slept, and I jumped over a wall to get to a rally because it was too long to walk around, and I tore up my knee. And so it was all swollen up, and I was dragging my leg. And the vote went up late on a Sunday night, and I thought, well, I'll just drag my leg home and I'll sleep and just sleep the sleep of the dead until I wake up. Then I'll figure out what to do. And I laid down and probably slept about 2.5 hours, and I just couldn't sleep anymore. And I got up and I wrote a bill draft request to repeal Obamacare. I had it at the door of the Legislative Services offices when they opened it. And a few hours later, I had the 40-word draft with the 100% repeal of Obamacare. And I brought that forward and got a lot of signatures on it, introduced it. I turned it into a discharge petition, and we got 173 signatures on the discharge petition. There were only 178 Republicans in that Congress. It was bipartisan. One Democrat did sign it. If we could have gotten 218, we'd have forced a vote on the repeal of Obamacare in the same session that it passed. And Heritage Action said that discharge petition, because people were held accountable to sign it, made the difference between 7 and 8 congressional seats altogether. That Republicans that ran on repeal of Obamacare, that made that point that their opponent had voted for it, they would be against it and they would vote to repeal it. Well, no one wonders where I stand. I'm for the full 100% repeal of Obamacare. Christy Vilsack would go to Congress to defend Obamacare and defend Obama and his agenda. That's her statements. That's the difference. Steve King is for the full 100% repeal. That's plank 1 in my platform. I believe it's plank 1 in Mitt Romney's platform. And that's what we've got to move forward to do if America is going to grow and prosper and ascend upwards into our American destiny rather than slide off into the abyss of the default that Greece is looking at. Second priority, plank 2, is I've come to the conclusion as I'm watching the politics, of course, and dealing with the 435 people in the House and the members of the Senate that I interact with on an irregular basis, but there are good people over there, and I'll say a growing number of good people. And I've come to this conclusion: the will to balance the budget does not exist in the United States Congress today. to get to that point where we would balance the budget willfully. When I went there in 2003, I went to the chairman of the budget committee and said, "Where's my balanced budget? Where's our balanced budget?" And he looked at me and said, "There isn't one. We can't balance the budget. Don't you know the dot-com bubble has burst? We've been attacked on September 11th. We're at war. We're in the prospects of starting another war. We've got TSA to ramp up and all the securities in this country. We can't balance the budget." And I pressed that we could and should, and I thought I would put my little team of freshly hired staff to work to rewrite the entire federal budget. And it was a little harder than we were prepared to do in our little shop there. Since that time, I've turned my pressure up through the Republican Study Committee, and it took several years to get to the point where even the conservative Republican Study Committee was prepared to offer a budget that balanced. We did that, though, several years in a row, and I've stuck with that all along. The Ryan budget, as much criticism as it has taken, still doesn't balance for 26 years. That's not fast enough. Marilyn and my 3 sons are in their mid and early 30s. When you look at the last balanced budget that came through about 2001, and think that, you know, that's just kind of their working years. Though they really just got into the economy about that period of time, and they would be knocking on the door of Medicare and Social Security before that budget balanced. But they would be checking into the next slide before Barack Obama agenda budget would balance. It's not even part of his language anymore. He said about 3 or 4 years ago that he would cut the deficit in half. Now he doesn't talk about it. There's no intent to restrain it. He stood before our conference on February 10th, 2009, and he said that Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't have enough nerve. He didn't spend enough money. And he said he lost his nerve and pulled back in the second half of the 30s, and in doing so, they brought about a recession within a depression, and unemployment went up. And then along came World War II, the greatest economic stimulus plan ever. That's not quite verbatim, but that is an accurate composite of Barack Obama's statement to us that day. And so, excuse me, he has no will to balance the budget. He is a Keynesian economist on steroids. He believes that you can borrow money from the Chinese and the Saudis, and by the way, a lot of this money is borrowed from the American people. Put it in the hands of people for some reason, any reason or no reason, and tell them that it's their patriotic duty to go out and spend it, and if they go out and spend it, it'll stimulate the economy, and all will be right with the world someday. That has never worked any time in history. The ghost of John Maynard Keynes hangs over Western Europe, and they're in debt and deficit also as far as the eye can see. The ghost of John Maynard Keynes lives in the brain of Barack Obama, and I think that he is more aggressive than Keynes. In fact, towards the end of Keynes' life, he pulled back. He started to reassess himself. He really never did lay out a pattern that he stuck with for a lifetime, but we're stuck with his philosophy among the Democrats in Washington. And I will tell you there's a lot of difference between Democrats in Iowa and Democrats in Washington. My neighbors that are Democrats are generally reasonable people that balance their checkbook, and sometimes they're traditional Democrats, and in their mind they really are Republicans or independents. I get along fine with my neighbors that are Democrats. I don't get along so fine in a philosophical standpoint from those that come out of places like Berkeley and San Francisco, and some of them from Massachusetts. But what we need is, plank number 2, a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. If we can get that, we can put this country back on track again. And the will doesn't exist to pass that out of the Congress today, and I don't think it's going to exist after the election unless Mitt Romney calls for a mandate from the American people so that he can use the bully pulpit of what I believe will be his presidency to press Congress to pass a balanced budget amendment out of the House and the Senate and send it to the states for ratification, where I'd like to see Iowa be the first state to vote to ratify a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. It takes 38 states. I'd like to see Iowa be the first state. So repeal Obamacare, pass a balanced budget amendment, and then I want to say a few words about energy. I already have. We're the #1 renewable energy producing congressional district in all of America, and there's no reason for that not to get stronger and better. And we need to take this renewable energy that we have and do like Texas did with oil. We need to expand our education, train our people, continue to do that. We've done a good job so far. Manufacture and build all the products and the parts and the enzymes and everything that we can that has to do with wind and biodiesel and ethanol and any other renewable energy that can spring up here. Keep that knowledge base here, keep the industry here, and produce the energy here, and then in 25 or 50 years or whatever it is, we'll look back and think, you know, we're exporting know-how, we're exporting technology, and we are exporting products that they have to have for them to expand their renewable energy in their parts of the country and the world. Texas has done that with oil. They developed the know-how there, and we are doing it now with renewable energy. There are several strong intergenerational iterations that we can add to this. It's not just selling a gallon of ethanol or a kilowatt of electricity. It's all of the things that go into making it that we're doing here that we need to expand and make sure that we're the center so that we're selling this to the rest of the world. That's the main thing for Iowa's energy. But I am for all of the above plan on energy. I don't want to have exclusive, just focus on the renewable energy part of this. That doesn't solve our problem. We are probably the most energy-rich nation in the world. Of the large nations in the world, we're probably the most energy-rich. So I'm for this. Let's drill the outer continental shelf. Let's get those rigs back in the Gulf and drill in the Gulf after the BP oil spill. Let's go up and drill ANWR. Let's drill the non-national park public lands, see how that works for us. The work that's going on in the Vaca region, my sons recognize that and started a company up there hauling materials into the oil fields. Good for everybody that takes that risk and goes to work. That helps all of us. While we're on the petroleum side of this, however, the Keystone XL pipeline is a colossal mistake on the part of the White House. There is no rationalization or justification for the President of the United States blocking the Keystone XL pipeline. There's no environmental reason. We have thousands of miles of pipeline all over this country without a problem. And yes, occasionally there's been a break here, a break there. It's been fixed up, but it's a tiny little minor part of it all. We can build pipelines, and we've done so. In fact, I've done so with my hands. But to block that pipeline coming down out of Canada resulted in this. I believe that it slowed down the Hyperion refinery in South Dakota. And I have no doubt that it accelerated the negotiations between the Canadians and the Chinese to export northern Albertan oil out of the oil sands region to China. I met with two members of the Canadian Parliament on the night of February 12th. Happened to be Lincoln's birthday, just a coincidence. And there, I asked them if their Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, was about ready to land in China. And he looked at his watch to check the date, and he said, actually, he's back now. So I hope they don't have a deal selling their oil to the Chinese. I want to build a pipeline so we have exclusive to the oil out of Alberta. The answer was, well, they have a deal. So I hope it's not airtight, but we think it's airtight. It's a good, solid agreement. Then I said, well, it will take years to build a pipeline through the Cascades and the Rockies because of the special property rights that are there for their native Canadian Americans. And they said, normally that's true, but Stephen Harper has met with the Native Americans, and we think it's fast-tracked. This is a done deal, but never fear, if you ever get your pipeline built, you will be our preferred customers. Isn't that a good feeling? And so I defined preferred customers there that night. That's the ones that outbid the other guy. We're not preferred. Chinese are preferred if they outbid us. And maybe in their hearts they would, but they're going to sell the highest bidder. And that's what the President has put us in. It is an oil security issue. All of the above, energy, clean burning coal, nuclear, all of this renewable that we have, petroleum, natural gas, fracking, let's go for it all. We can drive energy costs down in this country. Actually, I paid $3.15 for gas last night here in this town. So that part of it, some of that's working. Best bargain I've seen in a while on gas. We can drive that all down, and doing so makes us all more competitive. And many of these things are things I've been front and center on driving this for a long time. And then the fourth component of this is just growth. It's the growth that comes when you have low, stable, predictable